bands and friends that kind of...
We were dating back then.
Right, cross-pollinated. But I was telling him this story earlier. So there was an old newspaper thing called The Recycler, kind of like Craigslist, right? And in the back there were always, bass player wanted kind of postings and stuff. That's actually how Motley Crue formed, was through a Recycler ad, right? So I met this guy through the Recycler named Brian Eichler, who's a drummer. Drummer seeks a band, and he listed 3 influences: U2, Common Bond, and one other thing. And it was like, Common Bond? Nobody knows Common Bond. That's the band Chuck Cummings is. I know that band, right? So I answered that ad. I went to his house. We met. We hung out. We're doing stuff. He's like, well, I'm in another band. Has this girl singer named Jamie, and we play shows and stuff. So they lost their bass player and put out a Recycler ad. And this guy answered, and he's like, hey man, come check us out. We're playing a show with our new bass player. That bass player was Eric Camposano. So I'm there to watch my friend Brian play in his band, and this new bass player shows up named Eric. And I'm like, that guy plays bass, cool, man. And it was like, then the 3 of us formed a band called Laughing Boy. And then we had a different singer, a friend of Eric's from, right? An old band. And then that fell apart because Brian and Jamie started dating, and Jamie's like, I want you for my band, right? So they went off. So Eric and I are left, and Eric's like, well, I'm going to hit up the best singer I know and start writing some new tunes. This is like fall '89. In January of '90, Eric calls me and goes, hey man, we need some help finishing some of these tunes. Can you help us out? So we met at my living room. We wrote Whirlwind and some other tunes. They had the tunes kind of going, and then I just put out in some guitar parts that were influenced by Stone Roses and the Cult, and they were like, yeah, that sounds cool, and there it goes. That's literally the origin of the band, is 2 Recycler ads.
You got to tell the wing kicker.
Well, okay, so we're playing, practicing at our friend John's house. John Hertzberg is the guy who did the electronic percussion on Round. And Tim was in a band with him in high school called Tapestry. Kind of band where like John had keyboard rack stuff, like early computer-driven, MIDI-driven keyboard stuff, just like a genius of that world. They had a live guitarist, and Tim up there singing like Depeche Mode, which he does very well. And they would, pack out shows at the local club even while they were in high school, right? They would just...
I wore sashes.
He wore sashes. And so, what was the question? Wayne. Sorry, we were practicing at John's rehearsal space. We didn't have a drummer. Tim was playing drums because Tim is also a drummer, and we were writing all the Neverland Sessions kind of songs with Tim playing drums. And we had a friend play drums at this show where we opened for a band called Utonda, also Chuck Cummings' band. Chuck Cummings is kind of a key person in this whole thing, right? Chuck Cummings is actually a realtor and got me the house that I live in, so Chuck Cummings is everywhere in my life. And at that show was a fella named Wayne who was like, well, I came to see Utonda, but these guys announced from the stage that they needed a drummer.
So I went and I was in college at the time, and so my best friend from high school was like, hey, remember that band Utonda? They're going to play this show. You want to go? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go check it out. So we went down, and these guys opened, and I remember Tim saying from the stage, oh, thanks to so-and-so for filling in on the drums because we don't really have a drummer yet. And I said to my buddy, I'm like, oh, these guys are pretty good. Maybe I'll just go say hi. Yeah. So I went up to Tim afterwards. I'm like, hey, man, I play the drums. So
the story in the band that is funny is like, we're 1 year older than Wayne, but at the time, Tim was like, hey, that kid that came up after the show, the kid, like he's just, 14 or something, like that. But Wayne, we had a tryout with Wayne in Tim's parents' living room. Wayne just was awesome, like he played all these fills that were kind of U2 inspired and stuff. We're just like, oh yes, you know. And because he was a seasoned player already at that point. He was in a cover band in high school, and he had been playing guitar. So that's the thing. He sang and played guitar. He played drums, and he just already by age 19 he had this musicality, right? So it was very key, and then he joined the band, and like our first show that band was opening for the Altar Boys on Halloween at Yorba Linda Friends Church, and that was the debut of the Prayer Chain, the actual The Prayer Chain.